In Russia, things are burning and exploding almost every day. The occupying army is suffering from supply and logistics problems after successful operations by Ukrainian special services deep inside the aggressor country. What is striking is not only the number of strikes, but also the geography of the targets and their scale. So, how many energy facilities and oil refineries have the defense forces struck over the past week? And most importantly, what kind of damage have they inflicted on Russia's economy and military complex? My colleagues have prepared an informational briefing.
On the evening of October 27th, a powerful explosion occurred at the Sakhalin Greece 2 power plant. This is not just an ordinary facility, but one of the key power stations in the Far East. The moment of the explosion was captured by a car dash cam. Immediately, the region began experiencing disruptions in industry, transportation, and public utilities, and in several districts, water disappeared. After all, the 120-megawatt power plant supplies electricity to a third of the region. By the way, the distance from Sakhalin Island to the nearest points of Ukraine's eastern border is approximately 8,000 kilometers. The following day, October 29th, turned out to be extremely productive for the Ukrainian military. On that day alone, the defense forces struck 3 strategic targets in 3 different regions of Russia. Among the targets hit was the Novospassky oil refinery in the Ulyanovsk region. According to media reports, after encountering Ukrainian long-range strike capabilities, the facility ceased operations. As a result, the Russians lost the ability to process 600,000 tons of crude oil per year. That's 750 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. On the same day, a strike also hit the Mari oil refinery in the Republic of Mari El. This plant is one of the key fuel producers for Russia's central regions. According to various sources, it was capable of processing more than 1.5 million tons of crude oil per year. To hit it, the drones had to fly approximately 1,000 kilometers. The third major target on October 29th was the gas processing plant in Budyonovsk, located in the Stavropol Krai. The facility belongs to the company Lukoil and plays an important role in gas processing and chemical production. At the end of last month, the Russian energy system once again came under attack from Ukrainian long-range weaponry. The Navy reported that on that day, a Neptune missile struck the thermal power plant in the city of Orion. The facility supplies power to industry and provides electricity to the population. Among other things, the thermal power plant supplied regional enterprises of Russia's military-industrial complex. Its capacity was 330 megawatts. And to hit it, you need to cover approximately 160 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Besides the thermal power plant, the main explosive event of the day was the attack on one of the largest oil refineries in the city of Yaroslavl, which specializes in fuel production. The annual processing capacity is about 15 million tons of crude oil per year. However, there is currently no information in open sources about how much the impact on the plant has affected production. A short pause and then more striking events. On the night of November 5th, explosions occurred simultaneously in 2 Russian regions, Vladimir and Oriol oblasts. In Oriol, the strike once again targeted the thermal power plant, while in Vladimir region, it hit one of the largest oil refineries in southern Russia, Lukoil Volgograd Nefte Pererabotka. This enterprise is a giant, capable of processing, according to various sources, up to 16 million tons of oil per year, which is considerable. It accounts for 9.5% of all oil refining in the Russian Federation and is a key fuel supplier for the southern region.
Ukraine is imposing sanctions against Russian entities engaged in resource extraction in the Arctic. This was announced by President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to him, partner countries will continue to implement restrictive measures. They will take Ukraine's proposals into account in their sanctions packages. In addition, partner sanctions will be synchronized within Ukrainian jurisdiction. And starting today, the 19th package of EU sanctions against Russia comes into effect in Ukraine. The president described the restrictions as strong. It is expected that they will inflict losses on the aggressor amounting to at least tens of billions of euros annually. Somehow, European sanctions restrictions have not affected certain firms. These are companies involved in the production of the Russian Orion drone, which is capable of conducting reconnaissance and patrol missions within a radius of up to 250 kilometers at an altitude of 7,000 meters. Moreover, this drone can carry out missile and bomb strikes. The main intelligence directorate has published a diagram of the enemy drone and information about the enterprises involved in its production. According to intelligence, more than a dozen of them have not been subjected to sanctions. Mikhailo Manalyuk will provide more details.
It is called the Bayraktar killer. The Russian Orion strike reconnaissance drone hunts Ukrainian unmanned boats. What threat does it pose to the armed forces of Ukraine? What kind of danger does such an aerial target present? And why are sanctions still not applied to this enemy drone?
Most of the affiliated companies that supply certain components, such as cameras, electronics, and other parts, are not under any sanctions. And this is the main problem.
The Orion is produced by the sanctioned Russian group of companies, Kronstadt. The device, weighing almost a ton, is capable of carrying up to 250 kilograms of payload. This includes systems for aerial photography, radio intelligence modules, optical electronics, Kh-50 missile warheads, UAVs, and much more.
This is a large drone that is capable of carrying certain advanced devices and specialized equipment for delivering highly precise airstrikes, such as missiles that are either remotely controlled or laser guided. So, from a security standpoint, this particular equipment is truly dangerous. It can significantly impact the front line, and it has the potential to destroy Ukrainian defenses, equipment, and personnel. So, its presence on the battlefield represents a serious threat.
It can operate at an altitude of about 7,000 meters, staying in the airspace for 24 hours, so we understand that in reality, this is a problem.
In addition, the Orion is a carrier of the new Russian cruise missile Banderol. With a relay, it can strike targets at a distance of up to 300 kilometers. The main intelligence directorate has found that 43 Russian companies supply components for the production of this drone, and they purchase them abroad. And a third of these firms are still not under sanctions.
This is actually an instruction, a call to action to further expand the sanctions packages, add even more companies to the list of those who support terrorist regimes and are sponsors of terrorism. Sanctions work. Are they working effectively, and can they be made more effective? That's always the case, because this is ongoing work that needs to be done every day to identify supply channels for various components and restrict them.
Russia can transfer technologies and components for the production of the Orion to its allies, Iran or North Korea. Therefore, this aerial vehicle poses a threat, not only to Ukraine, but also to Europe. Intelligence officers are calling for economic strikes against enterprises that supply servos and parts to the Russian military-industrial complex, as well as to synchronize effective sanctions and monitor their enforcement.
It's not right to say that all is lost. It's simply a huge amount of work. We're being honest here. We need to constantly work to ensure that both companies and their affiliates cannot cooperate with the aggressor country. As of now, and with the level of resistance demonstrated by the armed forces of Ukraine, Orion-class drones are not effective. They remain dangerous, they continue to pose a threat, but in any case, they are not something ultimate.
The best sanctions are means of counteraction. In September, Ukraine's unmanned systems forces destroyed another Russian Orion. The cost of such a device exceeds $5 million. The General Staff does not specify on which particular front line the enemy UAVs were shot down. Experts suggest that Ukrainian interceptor drones were used to strike the target.
This tool is very well designed for radar systems. Some interception elements can be used. Our interceptor drones can also work against such a target. So basically, you just need to detect and intercept them. Because essentially, this is one of the Russian eyes that helps, for example, the Russians to target and strike our facilities.
Drones of this class are vulnerable. They are large and relatively unwieldy. Even though their range is claimed to be large, in reality it is within reach of Ukraine's air defense. Even though Russia claims that the equipment is locally produced on the territory of Muscovy, some experts assert that inside there is a huge list of various systems to which Russia has no connection whatsoever.
Experts note that the Russian army has only a few dozen Orions. 4 years ago, they planned to deliver 20 units to the military. And it is unlikely that the Russian Federation has managed to establish serial production of these UAVs. And even if they have, the armed forces of Ukraine have the means to destroy them. And perhaps in some 50th EU sanctions package, the companies that still supply components for the production of Russian Orions will finally be banned. Mikhailo Manilyuk, Alexander Krulikov. Details on the Intermarathon TV channel.